Donald Trump has issued a typical deranged statement from his social media account.
Donald Trump put out a statement.
Let me read it to you because it's literally breaking right now as we go live. It says, statement by Trump, the Democrats should have never done it. The Supreme Court should have never approved it. And it's going to lead to horrible things for so many people. This guy's such a clown, Cohen. The great USA divide will now grow far worse. I'm sorry I'm laughing at it, just like such a clown. The radical left Democrats have weaponized everything. But remember that it is a dangerous two-way street. The Trump tax returns once again show how proudly successful I have been and how I have been able to use depreciation and various other tax deductions as an incentive for creating thousands of jobs and magnificent structure and enterprises. I can't even read the rest, Cohen. To me, it shows that he's an utter criminal. What's your response?
Well, to me, it just shows how delusional that he is. First of all, the thousands of employees, are we talking about the undocumented ones that he held up in cages, or is he talking about the ones that he ended up stiffing? I'm not 100% certain. But putting all of that aside, at the end of the day, what does his tax returns really show you and me and the American people and so on? And what it really shows is that he is not as wealthy as he wanted people to believe, as he claimed, as he purported to be. And more importantly, that something I had said, not just here on this show, but on television, before the House Oversight Committee, even on my own YouTube, on TikTok, you name it, on all my social media, that Donald Trump manipulated the values of his assets to fit his purpose. He would increase them in order to increase the net worth in his personal financial statement, and then he would decrease them in order to obtain some form of a tax benefit. And that you're going to see here. But you're also going to see, on top of that, who loaned him money, how much money he actually owed, who holds the debt, whether or not those institutions received any benefit during the 4 years of his presidency. But the one thing that I am certain that they will ultimately have to figure out is how and why Donald took the $130,000 payment that he had made back to me, which was $260 because he grossed it up. And for those of you that don't understand the concept, because I'm in the 50% tax bracket, for me to get my $130 back from Donald, he'd have to give me $260,000. So interestingly enough, he took that $260,000, which was the payoff to the porn star for pulling his mushroom pecker, and he took it as a deduction, as a business expense, which I can assure you is not in the IRS tax code.
Cohen, you mean that he had to pay you $260,000 instead of paying the tuition for your daughter's college to try to get around like he was doing with Weisselberg? He actually had to pay you the $260,000. I really want to break down, though, specifically what you talked about, because it is a bombshell criminal thing that we see in his returns. And to have you here break it down, the person who's literally at the center of this, you're talking about the situation, of course, with Stormy Daniels, the payoff to Stormy Daniels. And what you're saying here and what we're seeing reflected in these returns in the raw data, what it looks like is the payments to Stormy Daniels and by proxy to you on behalf of him were taken as a deduction. Were taken as a business expense. Now, I'm a lawyer, although I spend a lot of my time being a lawyer on podcasts. But yes, I'm a practicing lawyer. That sounds illegal to me, Michael Cohen. What's your thoughts?
Well, let's just say it's probably not an accepted deduction in the IRS tax code. I mean, it is what it is. But one of the things that all of the Meidas Mighty and all of those finally throughout the United States and around the world will understand is how much money Donald Trump was paying in taxes, which was bare to nothing. In fact, in 16, 20, 17, the 2 years that he paid $750 per year or $1,500 combined, I myself paid over $3 million, and I was charged with tax evasion. So I would suspect that Donald is going to have some very serious tax issues here. Now, one of the things I do want to caution people on is that this is not going to be quick, like the way that the Southern District of New York, the prosecutors threw the hammer down on me, giving me 48 hours, or they were going to file an indictment that was going to include my wife. If they tried this with Donald, rest assured, he would let Melania get up and go to Danbury in order to save himself. He wouldn't put himself ahead of Melania. That I can assure you. But one of the big problems that you have here is the volume of documents that constitute this tax return release. And it's in the millions of pages. My documents, my 5-year tax returns were 1,800 pages a year, right? Which is about 9,000 documents. His is around 1 million, because Donald ran a very complicated process. And of course, the more complicated, the better it is for him. He had over 700 corporations, and the corporations that he had, so it would be like, for example, his airplane. So you had TAG, T-A-G, which was Trump Aviation Group. But part of TAG would have, for example, his Citation 10, which was under Trump Endeavor 1. But then he had the 757, which was under a different LLC. And each one of these had to then file its own specific tax return. Now, I did hear a talking head on one of the cable news stations talking about how Donald Trump took in income, for example, on the 757, and that income was derived from his usage during the campaign and somewhat thereafter, of about $860,000. Now, I'm making up that number, but it was somewhere in that range. His deductions, coincidentally, was the identical amount, the $860,000, netting him out to zero, which means what? Which means he paid absolutely zero in taxes. Now, one of the things that they're going to do, and this doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand, if you took in $860,000 of income, what is the cost per hour? Because it doesn't go by mileage, obviously. It goes by hour of flight using depreciation on a 757, which coincidentally happens not to be a brand new aircraft. It's an older aircraft that he refurbished. How much does it cost per hour to operate that aircraft? And the truth is, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,800, 4,000. Let's get crazy with our numbers, Midas Mighty, all right? You guys with me? So let's say it's $5,000 an hour, which it's not, but let's just say that it is. Take the number of hours that aircraft was used during that year, multiply it times the 5,000, and that will tell you your expenses. But that's not how Donald works. Donald works in a mysterious way. The mysterious way is whatever he believes that the value of something is what the value is. Whatever he thinks it costs him in order to operate that asset, that's what he believes that it is. There is no backup documentation that they could possibly provide to the IRS or anyone that will justify $800,000 plus of expense on that aircraft. It just doesn't exist, and it's impossible for them to provide. So he's going to have at least a problem with that specific LLC. That specific LLC then unravels a much larger chain of issues that Donald Trump is going to have when it comes to these tax returns. But again, because of the volume of documents, it's going to take obviously a lot longer in order to get this thing done. What would be really nice is if a couple of these accounting think tanks would get together, donate their time, and work with the IRS, because the IRS is short-staffed to start off with, And most of them don't understand the complex nature of the way that he would even set up an LLC. So one LLC for Donald wouldn't just have one LLC. It would have subparts to it, like 1% would go into the Donald J. Trump Trust. 99% would go into, let's say if it was Trump Endeavor, it would be Trump Endeavor 1 LLC or Trump Endeavor A LLC. He would do some secondary LLC in order to own the interest of the first LLC, which he always believed gave him an extra layer of protection in the event that there was a lawsuit. So again, I know this sounds complicated, and it does because it is, and it was designed to be complicated. So despite the fact that it's complicated, that doesn't mean that it's impossible to unravel. And in this specific case, that's what's going to happen. They're going to unravel each and every one of the LLCs one at a time. And again, if there were a couple of think tanks that would donate some of their expertise and knowledge, this process would go much quicker.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.